Thank you for joining us today on our Sacred Hoops podcast. My name is Lee Palmer with Sacred Hoops. Today we are joined by the Executive Director of Sacred Hoops, Alan Bertram, and Superstar All-Star Brett Severson, which we will get to here. Today we want to talk about overcoming obstacles. But before we get started, I would like to thank SunGold Sports in Mitchell, South Dakota. SunGold Sports has been a great corporate partner of ours. They do almost all of our printing. They do our uniforms. They do our team stores. They just do an excellent job. If you're looking for just even the simplest of jobs to a huge corporate job, get a hold of Cody at SunGold Sports in Mitchell. They've been just a great partner, and we are so proud to have them partner up with us today. So today we want to talk about overcoming obstacles. So first of all, I want to turn it over to you, Coach, and kind of why we decided to do this podcast this early in the season.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Brett for coming in. It's been kind of a cool thing with, I think athletics always has a cool way of bringing different people together. And, 4 or 5 years ago, I was able to meet Brett because his wife was coaching my daughters. And from there, one of my best friends was evolved. And as I've gotten to know Brett as a person, I got to know more about him as an athlete. And one of the cool things about Brett's story is just the fact that he's had to overcome a ton throughout his career and really reached the pinnacle all through that process. And so I thought, what a great, not a better person to come in and talk about this topic, number one. Number two, the main reason why is because, man, our young people today are having to overcome obstacles in so many different ways. Like we're going to talk with Brett's story about, like a physical injury. But we got so many kids trying to fight through mental stuff and all these other things that they're fighting obstacles every day. And so I'm hoping that, through today's podcast, that we can provide a couple maybe helpful tools, some things that they can utilize that can help them get through that so that they can have that best experience possible as an athlete.
And one of the things, and we'll remind you at the end of the podcast, we're always available here at Sacred Hoops for the athletes. If you're struggling mentally or just need somebody to talk to, get a hold of us because the two of us are always available. Coach Boomsma is available, so we've got people available that will talk. So before we get way out of control, we'll let Brett start telling his story. So first of all, Brett, thanks for coming down and joining us here today. We're going to talk baseball instead of basketball, but it's still an obstacle thing. You suffered a major injury early on in your career. Why don't you tell people that aren't familiar with your story kind of what happened to you in high school with your arm?
You're right. Sacred Hoops being basketball, I'm a baseball player, and this was a football injury, actually. To touch on a little bit of everything, my junior year of high school, I was in a football play where I hyperextended my elbow, completely tore my UCL, and that's the Tommy John injury, commonly known for baseball players. And it was not until January 20th of my junior year, ended up having to undergo surgery and Tommy John surgery. Even 10, 12 years ago was a lot different than today. You're talking kind of 8 months to a year completely out of commission and then coming back from that point. And it was different for me, going from playing football, basketball, baseball, golf, all those things. So all of a sudden you're kind of cooped up inside and have to stay relatively inactive. And just figuring out how I was, one, physically going to get through it, then probably bigger was mentally how to get through it. Just used to being so active. And I guess talking with my dad, who's always been a huge supporter of mine and my brother's athletics, it probably hit him just as hard as it hit me. And as soon as we could, I guess how we approached it was attacking it from a physical standpoint, rehab standpoint, and almost using it as a motivating factor. It was a big obstacle, but almost using it as, okay, how can we make this get better with this? And going into my senior year, how I did that was just long days of started off 6 a.m, going down to Sioux Falls for rehab with my mom. She'd take me so I'd get some sleep in the car. Coming back for school, we'd have basketball practice. I wasn't able to play football. Or was my senior year had to switch positions. And and then during basketball practice, and then would do baseball workouts at night, and then finally get home about 7, 8 o'clock from Sioux Falls after 2 trips from Sioux Falls. And I mean, that's kind of how I approach it as a motivating factor of how can I get back, and not only get back, but get better after this big-time injury.
Well, and one thing I want to talk about, too, is the fact, okay, so you're a high school junior. Obviously, baseball, you're a multi-sport athlete. Baseball is your go-to sport. Like, that's your love, and that's something that you've excelled at tremendously. When you hear of an injury like that to a major part of what you do as a pitcher, what are some things that you mentally had to do to yourself to help you overcome this? Because there's a lot of, I envision a lot of really dark times where you're sitting there thinking, am I going to be able to come back the same way? Am I going to have the same velocity? Am I going to, all those type of things? Or am I going to be able to go play college baseball, type thing? So maybe what were 1 or 2 things, Brett, that you did or tried to do that helped you overcome the mental part of it?
Well, I think one of the first things when I found out I had to have surgery, the Vikings had just actually beat the Packers in a playoff game, the Randy Moss Moon game, and they were going to play in Philadelphia the final week. And my dad said, you want to go out to Philadelphia for the playoff game? We're big Vikings fans. So I think that was kind of a distraction, finding something positive. What else can you do to distract you from this? You got this long road of recovery coming up, but finding other points of your life. I know that's a little extreme, traveling across the country for a football game, but finding some other forms of joy, that sort of stuff to kind of prepare you for that. And as far as overcoming the doubt right away, I think it happened at a time too where you heard a lot of people overcoming Tommy John and coming out, throwing harder, gaining some velocity, some things with the surgery that would almost make you better. So I think that was another big thing too, is focusing on that is, okay, there's been a lot of people who've gone through this surgery and came out even better after the fact. So focusing on those things and not letting the doubt of, will I come back as good? Will I be able to pitch again? That sort of stuff. And I think on that road to recovery, when I was rehabbing, I got to the point where I was finally able to let it loose. I was working out. It was called Squeeze Play Hitting Academy in Sioux Falls. And I'm at the point in my rehab where I was full-blown able to get after it. And I never threw terribly hard growing up. I was maybe 78, 80 miles an hour when I was later on in my high school years. And on the radar gun, though, at Squeeze Play, I'm 74, 75. And my hitting instructor, who actually did the pitching lessons as well, he just said, you're at a mental block right now. You got to let it go. Because physically, I wasn't letting my arm get too far away from my body. But mentally, it was what was keeping me from doing that. So he just said, listen, you're not going to be any good at 74, 75 miles an hour straight, not getting past that. So you either need to let it go, and it's going to be just fine, or something's going to happen, and you're going to have to start over anyway. So, very next pitch, with a crow hop, 83 miles an hour, 9 miles an hour, just like that. So overcoming that mental obstacle and just saying, okay, here I am. Let's see if it's getting back to where I want it to be, too. That was another thing, too, of just saying almost like, screw it, get after it, and let your arm go a little bit.
You see a lot of athletes that do that, though, coming off a major injury, where the mental part's what holds them back more than anything. They play a little bit more tense, a little bit tighter, a little bit afraid of re-injuring, so they don't just let themselves go. What the cool part is, you overcome that first obstacle. You come back, you do what you need to do in your high school career. You get recruited. You have some options to go play collegiately. You choose to play at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And a big-time opportunity away from home. And then all of a sudden your second obstacle comes up. This one a little bit different than the first one. If you want to talk a little about the next obstacle in your career, because what's really cool about Brett's career, what people don't understand, you have a high school injury, still accomplishes the goal of playing college. He's going to talk about the next obstacle that he has to overcome, and eventually it leads to him playing professional baseball. So it's really kind of a cool situation. So if you want to talk about, you get to Omaha, your next obstacle, Brett.
Yeah, I get to Nebraska, Omaha. I planned on coming off the surgery, redshirting anywhere, wherever I was going to go, just give me that extra year of getting stronger physically. So I redshirt at Nebraska Omaha. I show back up my second year and play fall ball. And after fall ball had completed, the only kind of real sour point of UNO is I'd been there for a year and a half. I get a voicemail from my coach, more or less saying, we have our pitchers, you're not one of them. So I guess without sugarcoating it, just flat out got cut from Nebraska Omaha. So that's a huge shot to the ego, a lot of self-doubt, makes you question, that sort of stuff. But I still knew I wanted to play college baseball. And with the recruiting process from high school, Augustana, Northern State, St. Scholastica, those sort of schools who were interested in me at the time, I thought I'd still maybe have some options there. And when you get cut, I guess you can go about it a couple ways. You can just give up on that dream of playing college baseball. You can just settle somewhere else. Or what I did was went to 24-Hour Fitness, hired a personal trainer the very next day after getting cut. And my mentality was, I'm going to show them they made a mistake. And that's how I went about it. I used it as a motivating factor. And I did everything I could to say, okay, I'm going to make it. Not only make it, I'm going to make it within this Division II level and within the same conference when I end up transferring to Augustana. And that became a motivating factor for me with that obstacle, and ended up getting my first career win against UNO, ironically, on a walk-off home run. So that was kind of icing on the cake.
Well, and I think one of the cool things, and Lee and I have talked a lot about just how obstacles in your life really make or break you based on how you handle it. And you can either embrace those things and say that, hey, they're there, and now I'm gonna go kick that thing's or I can let it completely own me. And that to me is the biggest difference between those people who really truly project themselves in life or in athletics and those who just have to float, is how you handle the adversity. And so your situation is what a great example for our young people. You're gonna in athletics, you're gonna get beat. In athletics, you're not necessarily always gonna be in the starting lineup or make the team you want to make. But it's how you handle those situations that's gonna make you or break you with your career. And then we all know in life there's a million things that happen, and if we don't handle those things in the right way, and that's one of the things that I think have always the reason why the two of us think so much alike is that I think that that's how we handle life every day is. We're just going to attack this damn thing, and I think that's one of the things that you did, and because of that, you went on to Augie, had a very, very great career at Augustana, which then led you to the next step. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about that today, going from Flandreau High School, UNO, Augie, your success at Augie, and then to be able the first time you sit down and say, I'm going to be a professional athlete. When you think back on that now, as an old cattle farmer now, right?
Exactly right.
When you think back on that now, what's your first thought, Brett? When you just look back on your career, what's your first thought?
I'm proud of it. It was independent baseball that I went on to play. Had goals of being drafted. Obviously, when you want to get drafted, you want to make the big leagues, all that sort of stuff. Did come to fruition that way. But, from Flandreau, facing a little bit of adversity from UNO, going to Augustana, having a rough freshman year. And then Augustana's current coach, who's had a lot of success there, won a national title, he drops me down to throw sidearm, and that kind of opened a lot of doors for me. Although I'm a little reluctant to give him too much credit for this. Anyway, found some success doing that as relief pitcher at Augustana, and then it was probably junior, senior year when I was like, okay, if I keep working at it, gain some velocity, continue to develop pitches, all that sort of stuff. Actually had the realistic goal of playing professional baseball at some level, wherever that ended up, and did a couple workouts for the Sioux Falls Canaries. Didn't work out. Went to a showcase in Chicago. Ended up getting signed by a team out of Chicago, and playing with the St. Paul Saints for 2 years after that as well. So yeah, I'm proud of it. Would I have guessed it coming out of high school, Tommy John surgery, all that sort of stuff? Probably not, but I kind of maintained that goal. So, I had a whole lot of help along the way. I always had great parents who provided whatever resources I need for that. And then coaches at Augustana College provided me the same opportunities, had that confidence in me as well. So looking back, it is kind of cool. Seeing where it all started and then where it ended up, and still playing today.
You look at, as a relief pitcher, it's a different mentality than it is in almost any position in any sport to be a relief pitcher, because you don't know if you're going in there for one batter, if you're going in there for 3 innings, what you're going in for, and you've just got to mentally prepare for that. Coming off Tommy John, coming off being cut at UNO, having your coach switch your pitching delivery, you've had all these different things, and then now all of a sudden you've got to just focus for one batter at a time. How has that helped you today, being out at the farm, working your cattle, being there for your wife who's a head basketball coach, for your kids and things like that? That mental approach, we call it mental toughness. How's that helped you today, and where do you think you can help others with that, or where others can get that kind of help?
It's kind of funny because you wouldn't see the translation from college sports, professional sports, and then all of a sudden to South Dakota farming. But I bring the same kind of competitiveness on the farm. Like, it sounds stupid. I want to be the most efficient on the farm. I want to have the best livestock on the farm. Like that sort of stuff. I'm always looking for ways to be better now professionally as a farmer that I was. Same kind of approach as when I was a baseball player and a college athlete, and I think my wife can attest to that too. Just kind of how I approach the farm is very, very similar to how I approached my athletic career. Of just try to outwork everybody, try to do the extra little things, try to prepare. And be prepared for as many things as you can, and I hope my kids see that. I got a 5 and a 2-year-old, so just the work ethic and kind of attacking different jobs, that sort of stuff, and if I did a certain job in this amount of time and to this level of success last year, I want to do it better this year in a shorter amount of time, like things like that. So there is a lot of translation there, even though on the surface you probably wouldn't just see that naturally.
And I can attest to that. I've had more farm conversations in the last 4 years than I have in the previous 44 years. But what's cool about it is I understand it. I understand it not because of necessarily my background. I mean, people who really know me are like, what the hell are you talking about farming and ranching for? But it's because of how Brett approaches it. And like when we talk about it, it's almost like you can erase the ranching part of it. It's about succeeding. It's about setting goals. It's about how am I going to get there? It's about competition. And so what's really cool is as he was speaking, I could hear a conversation, and so he's not just saying it. It's true. He lives it. I've got one last question for today, and this is a little bit off topic, but it can be a little bit on it too.
I hope it's not about his golf game, because
no, jeez. I mean, his wife wanted me to ask him.
It's a whole new podcast.
His wife wanted me to ask him if he wanted to talk about what it's like to be a coach's wife.
Oh,
spouse.
So that spouse, but we won't go there today either. With your experiences and everything, Brett, and sometimes I ask former athletes who are on these to talk about, like, hey, if you had your high school self in front of you, what advice would you give them? But I'll make yours a little bit broader today. If you had an opportunity where I could bring in all 50,000 athletes from South Dakota into one gym and have them sitting in the bleachers and gave you a microphone and said, Brett, I want you to give these young athletes one piece of advice, as a former athlete, what advice would you give today's high school athletes?
It's a heavy question. That is a broad question. Work hard. I mean, have a plan and then just attack it. I think you and I have talked too, where a lot of things today, a lot of people, it's easy to complain, come up with excuses, go somewhere else, do something else, as opposed to just outworking your opponent, outworking your teammates. I still think hard work almost trumps everything when it comes to sports. And same thing with life and co-workers, your job, everything. Just find out what you need to do to improve, what you're good at, what your weaknesses are, and just get a plan for improving those areas even more, and just working hard and kind of putting the blinders on. Like I said, when I got cut, it wasn't, okay, what can I do? Who can feel sorry for me? Okay, let's go hire a personal trainer and figure out how I can get better, and stuff like that. I think that would be the main thing, is figure out what you're passionate about and just work really, really hard at it.
When I think the most beautiful part about that was when you got cut, it wasn't that your parents or somebody else said, hey, Brett, in order for us to make this happen, we're going to get you a personal trainer and we're going to have you work hard. It was you that said, nah, this isn't how it's going to end. I'm going to do this. And I think that's the difference between those athletes who really make it and those who don't. So, well, you guys, I want to say thank you to Brett for coming in today, Lee, as always, and this is we could talk for the next hour probably, and so Brett, I hope that the parents and the athletes who watch this podcast today take some of those snippets of information when it comes to an obstacle or something in life that you're going through, that hey, you can get through it. It's not an end all. Put your mind to it, find a way. And like you said, create those positive distractions, right? And if you can do those things, you'll come out better than what you were before. So for Brett Severson, Lee Palmer, and Mr. Matt Larson of Big Sioux Media, I want to say thanks for everybody, and have a great day.